This is Merchandise Mart. Transfer to Brown Line trains at Merchandise Mart.
Yes, let's definitely cheers.
Doors closing.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, hello, welcome to the Wisendale Weekly Wrap-Up. I have with me today...
Hello, my name is Smitha Vasan.
Smitha and myself are in the BOSS showroom at the Merchandise Mart.
It's lovely.
359. I had to find her at the elevator.
It is not labeled.
Do you come to the show, Merchandise Mart often? Or
No, I used to work in corporate interiors actually, and
Okay.
so I came a lot, and we were super hitting up all the rep events, all the fun lunches, and all that stuff. But now I work in a more, well, they do interiors as well, but I'm currently working on a more institutional project, so it's not any rep stuff.
Yeah.
So I haven't been in a while.
Culture in the different firms different too? Not to get into the other firms, but...
I guess so, because the firm where I work now, which is Interactive Design Architects, is right over here on the River North. It's at Franklin and Erie, and it's just always been a firm of architects with 10 or more years of experience. Mm-hmm. So me and I think 3 other people were kind of the first time in the firm's roughly 30-year history that they hired people without 30 years of experience. I graduated without 10 years of experience. I graduated in 2017, so I've really only been in the industry for like a couple of years. So
yeah,
definitely a different culture, because where I was before, it was a lot of young people, a lot more experience, and just being thrown into things like this has to get done, do it. So it was a different thing.
And did you work you worked in corporate interiors up here, or
on
you're
the
from
west side.
Miami, right?
So I'm actually from the west suburbs by LaGrange, Western Springs area.
Cool.
And I went to University of Miami for school, and then I happened to land a job around the time I graduated, because I kind of just put feelers out, like, do I want to go back to Chicago? And I happened to get a decent job, and so I came back here for that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And thank you for being open to the first time ever recording over here. We're gonna try to see what that comes about.
Right.
Because all of this is, like I said, super nonchalant. We have 2 different microphones. One's a front and back. I think they have microphones where they're all a microphone.
This is very misleading. Like, I'm going to have to check it because it looks like a microphone over here.
So I got your information from Jane C. Allison. She was on the podcast maybe about 3 episodes ago, and then she was reached out by a girl named Madeline. So that's how she's like, hey, you should email her and see if she's open. So so thank you again. So how do you know Madeline now?
It was funny when you said I heard about this through Jane, because I was like, I don't know anyone named Jane.
Gotcha.
But I know Madeline through AIA, so both the Young Architects Forum, YAF, which does like young adult activities for architects around the city. So she, I believe, runs that. And then we are both this year part of the AIA Bridge Mentorship Program. So that just started about, I want to say, a month ago. And that's a program that AIA runs to put kind of emerging professionals, licensed or not, in contact with some of the more experienced and pretty well-known architects of the city. So
nice. And is that a like a day mentorship? Is it just like a shadow, or is it like a full like?
So far,
3
it's
months?
been a happy hour mentorship.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. I didn't know how structured it was. Or
it's pretty nice the way they set it up. We've had maybe 3 sessions now, and essentially the first session, or 2 formal sessions. So the first one was where we it's almost like speed dating. You sit and you go around and have 3 minutes to talk to each of about 20 mentors.
Right.
And you kind of, after that, you have to pick who are your top 3 that you'd like to work with.
Interesting.
So, and then you get paired. So then we had our reveal session, I guess, and then we got paired with our mentors.
Were you in that program too, or no? You're just running, or you were helping her with it, or you're part of it?
No. She and I are both part of that program.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we're both mentees in that program.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so those
so
are 2 separate
who were
things.
your mentors, or who were your architects?
I'm not sure who Madeline's is, but I am paired with Peter Landon.
Okay,
who's,
I'm not familiar.
He's one of the founding members of Landon Bonebaker.
Okay.
So they do a lot of work with like social housing and community development,
Nice.
mixed use, but like affordable housing, which is something I'm very interested in. And it seems to me, I'm always like, how can you do that without also being like the developer or the person with the money? Because developers are so easily like, that doesn't pencil. We're not investing on that side of the city, you know?
Yeah.
But I thought it was cool to see an architecture firm that seems to have kind of cornered that area and just is able to do all of that work. So I haven't told him that yet, but that's why I chose to work with him, because I'm interested to hear that part of it.
There's a guy who's working on the south side. He has that collaborative called Beehive. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Dion Lucas.
Dion, yeah, absolutely. I took him to lunch. We had lunch like a month or two ago. I got to get him on the podcast too and just kind of talk to him, chat him
he's
up for
also
sure.
an incredible mentor to me.
Yeah.
He is a really, really good human.
Yeah, for sure. And he's doing great work
Smart
on
guy.
there too. Smart dude, for sure. Yeah. And he's got a few different, I forgot the other one, the other name of it has the initials from down there, like the Inglewood.
E.G. Wood.
E.G. Wood. There
also
you go. Thank you.
Dion.
Oh my God.
I should have brought my hat. I would have shouted out. I try to wear that hat everywhere because I don't think a lot of people know what E.G. Wood is.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
Yeah.
So did you like your mentor, or is it something that you do once and then you're done with it, or do you keep?
They will continue to have
going?
meetup sessions from now until I want to say the end of November.
Okay.
And then we have like a big family dinner type thing. So. I like him
Nice.
so
Where
far.
does Madeline work?
Madeline works at SCB.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
Solomon Cordwell
Okay,
Benz.
well that's probably how she knows Jane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. Yeah.
And then you're also president of the IL-NOMA?
IL-NOMA is the Illinois chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects.
Cool.
I've been trying to develop the right pace at which to say that, because I just want to run through it.
It's kind of a lot.
Yeah,
right.
So I got involved with NOMA last spring, and then I passed all my exams for getting licensed very quickly, and they were like, great, you don't have anything to do now. Here's this organization.
How were the tests, by the way?
How were they?
Yeah, did you struggle with them, or you passed them on the first one?
I did.
Nice.
I was fortunate enough to get through them. People have told me it's because I'm a good test taker, but I did also put in a lot of work just studying. I had a really rigorous study routine for that, so it was like I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning every day of the week and study for 3 hours, and then go to work, and then go to yoga, and then go home and go to bed at 9 p.m. And it helped that at the time I was living with my parents, so I didn't really have other responsibilities, but for most of that time. But yeah.
Yeah, it's great you hammered them out.
Yeah,
That's
I was
awesome.
just told, like, when I had good mentors in college as well, 2 specific professors who just said, just finish those exams. The fact that you can take them right when you graduate now is huge. So I just knocked those out.
Yeah. So sorry not to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
Back to the IL-NOMA.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with that? So they said that you were they passed your test and said to get involved. Yeah.
They were looking for someone who was licensed, and I had just through mutual friends, someone who I knew put me in touch with a friend now who is in IL-NOMA, and she kind of roped me in, like, hey, you have to get into this.
That's how it works.
The architects come together. So she got me in there, and I don't know, it was a great organization. It's a really good family.
So how long have you been doing that?
I took on the presidency in January of this year.
Oh, okay, nice. And is it a 2-year term or what? 4
Yeah, it's a 2-year term.
2-year term?
It's a 2-year term.
Nice.
Just submitted our annual report this morning with like our, we submit to be considered chapter of the year, which we should be.
Yeah.
We should be chapter of the year. I was looking through all the stuff we did this year, and I was like, oh, we killed it.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was part of the IIDA Illinois chapter board, for a few different years. So I remember applying for the chapter of the year awards and things like that. How many members do you guys have?
I guess we probably have like 150 informal members, but we have currently 91 paid members, so that's pretty good.
Nice. Yeah,
I feel good about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so the yearly conference is coming up in Brooklyn in the middle of October.
Yes.
So you're going to go out there for that?
October 16th to 20th.
Very cool.
We'll be in Brooklyn. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Do you go to New York a lot? Have you been to New York? Or?
I have cousins who live outside of New York in West Orange, New Jersey. So
Okay.
I've been a few times for that, and yeah, I've been to New York a few
Yeah.
times. I'm always happy to come back to Chicago,
Yeah.
but
Definitely.
New York's a good time.
Yeah.
It wows me that it can be 4:00 in the morning and you can be out like having a snack at a cafe like it's the middle of the day.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
I really like that.
Yeah.
So you're going out there for that, and do they prep you guys on like what's going on, or do you guys have to do anything in particular?
For the conference, no. I mean, I know it's heavy on the conference end, right? We actually had the conference here in Chicago last year.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a lot of planning on their end. But as an attendee, you kind of sign up, pick
Oh,
your
nice. It was here
session.
last year?
Yeah.
Damn.
It was here
I
in
didn't know that.
Chicago last year. Oh, no.
Yeah, I know.
That's not good.
But now that you're the president, now I will know, right?
Yes, yeah. If it comes back,
Yeah.
I'll make sure everyone knows. Yeah, we actually broke a record with that conference last year. We had over 900 attendees, and
Damn.
they set it up really well. A lot of times the conference will be based out of one center, like one conference center, essentially, like maybe McCormick Place, for example, and you just have all your sessions in different areas. But they kind of took advantage of the fact that we have such a great downtown and great public transit, and they had it set up in like different firms, different offices, different
very cool.
showrooms, hosting different pieces of the conference.
Interesting.
So I think they're doing a little bit of the same with the Brooklyn conference, but I'm not 100% sure what that layout will be yet. So,
Yeah. Huh.
yeah.
That's interesting. I think Chicago Open House is around that time too. I think.
It
I'm not too sure.
It's that same weekend.
It's the same
actually.
weekend? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That must be why it's registering with me.
I'll be back actually early Sunday morning, so I'm definitely gonna go try to get out to whatever aspects of Chicago Open House I can, because I love that. Actually, I've started a tradition with my close friend that I worked at in my previous office, and we'll take advantage. We'll rent a car and just drive out to like the far out neighborhoods that we wouldn't normally go to.
Yeah.
There's incredible architecture in those corners.
Yeah, absolutely.
One year we went. It was 2 years ago. We hit a few things way far south on the south side. Last year we did a few spots on the west side, like Garfield Park and Austin area. There's amazing stuff there just because of like the way the city has developed and the way that wealth has moved around.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You just see, this is a little bit of a tangent, but my friends from Miami who came to Chicago, you know, they went to like the south side, they went to Garfield Park because there are buildings in those areas that are very notable if you're studying architecture, and there are structures that are really well known. And so as they go through, they said to me, like, this kind of looks like the hood, but these buildings are gorgeous. Like, you could tell these buildings are amazing.
Yeah.
And most cities don't have that, you know?
No.
Like, we definitely have our, well, not so much anymore, but we have our project-style buildings, but for the most part, like, there's incredible architecture and just in the way things have been built in this city, like, all
absolutely.
over.
Yeah,
It's
no,
very
I took,
incredible.
we're just wrapping up the Chicago Textile Week, which is something that my friend Kat put on, and I was fortunate enough to help her with that. But we went to a cool show down at the Douglas Museum, I want to say, down at the University of Chicago. And they had a very cool textile exhibit about a fashion school that's down in New Orleans, and they have.
Wait, was it Du Sable? No, it was Douglas. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The name of the exhibit is called Tufting Gun.
Okay.
So they just basically had this gun, and they were just making a bunch of different patterns. Anyways, long story short, I hopped on the green line down like where it starts.
Yeah.
And like just when taking it like all the way up here, you can just tell how it changes. Like the people change, everything changes, which obviously, you know, based on the neighborhoods that it does change. But yeah, if all the architecture down there is beautiful, it's just like a whole nother city down there. So I definitely encourage a lot of people to get down there for sure.
For sure. I actually live right off the Indiana Green Line stop.
Okay.
And I go both ways on the Green Line. I've taken it all the way out to Harlem and Lake, and I've taken it all the way down to 63rd and Cottage. I've taken it to 63rd and Ashland, and the development that's starting to happen along the Green Line is pretty cool, because I think they're doing a pretty good job of, you know, providing affordable housing, preserving Black-owned businesses. I think that's a really incredible piece, and I think it's important because it's kind of sad. In Woodlawn, there's stuff happening that's really unfortunate. I think it's because of the Obama Center is coming, but like people are getting pushed out of their homes, threatened, forced to sell.
Really?
It's like, 1950 all over again.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But then there's also aspects where people like E.G. Wood and Dion and lots of other organizations are trying to get the word out that like we need to invest in our communities. We
Absolutely.
need to, people pay rent like it's nothing, but once you like have ownership in something, that's worth so much. And I hope that, a neighborhood like Bronzeville, where I live, has been changing slowly over time. And I would hope that that kind of slow change allows people to see it as it's happening and try to like, take advantage of it, invest in themselves, invest in their neighborhood. That's where my greatest interests lie as far as like what can design do for us.
Yeah.
So.
And it's interesting because, the corporate world is kind of in the Loop and in River North, and I don't know how many opportunities, based on the buildings, just on like the buildings, how much work is down there. So it is more of like a residential, retail kind of work that you're doing down there, or that people are doing down there. How is the Obama Center? Because is IDEA part of that, right?
Yeah.
So when did that? I didn't know.
That is said institutional project that I have been working on that stops me from.
I know. I didn't know if we could talk about it or we wanted to talk about it or whatever.
Not extensively, but I can say that I am working on that, and it's a great opportunity. I think about it sometimes. You hear conversations and people are like, "Oh, Barack doesn't like that." I'm like, "Oh, he does it. Cool, cool." I'm not gonna call him that, but
right.
Cool.
Yeah, it's it is interesting to see the different work that's down south. I mean, even when Pilsen was kind of exploding, there's opportunities there, and unfortunately, I think with different organizations, the working in the community is definitely something that's super important, but you have to have those opportunities too.
Sure.
Is NOMA, are you guys doing like different events or activities coming up, or what ways do people kind of get involved with that organization?
Oh, so we have is this related to what you were saying about the Pilsen thing?
I'm just saying, just getting involved.
Oh, okay.
Because there's not a lot of Latino architects that are out there. There's not. I mean, I've went to like Hispanic Pro kind of networks.
Only like 2% of all architects are Latino.
Really?
This is like one of our biggest points. I'll get back to what you said about events with NOMA, but one of our biggest points that we like to bring up when we start our general body meetings, which happen every 2 months. Our next one will be in November.
Okay.
But we always have a slide where we kind of show demographics of the country compared to demographics of architects. So you see roughly 50% of the country is women, about 17% are African American, about 15% are Latino, and then we have Asian, Native American, and these things are all broken down, and they roughly are in certain ways based on the population of the country, but then you look at what architects are, and it's like 7% of all architects are women. I want to say like 3%. I don't have these memorized because there's always a slide, but like 3%.
A slide that you can speak to.
Yeah. 3%. If you don't have to memorize it, just don't. You know? This brain's busy. It doesn't need stuff in there. But if you don't, anyways, about 3% I believe are. No, it's 2% are African American. 2% I think are Latino, and the biggest one that we push in IL-NOMA is like less than 0.3% of all architects are Black women.
Wow.
So, and just to put that in numbers, like there are about 150,000 Black men who are architects in this country. There are less than 500 in the entire country, and I'm sure
Black women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so. And I'm sure that statistic is increasingly staggering if you look at Latino architects, we can't even get into really like Native American,
right?
There's such poor representation there. And it's the idea really with having this organization is one, to give people these connections because, we had an event last week, which was really great, that just kind of touched on the legacy of the organization. And one thing that was brought up was this letter that was written by Whitney Young to the then president of the AIA, just saying, like, you guys don't care about people of color. Like, you don't, we bring up our issues, we bring up our concerns, we bring up our interest in preserving our own buildings and communities, and it's all pushed aside. And, you know, that was a very long time ago, but that is kind of how NOMA started. So the organization started in 1971, and the idea was just to provide support and let people know, like, there are others of us here. Like, we can talk about these issues, and we can start to figure out for ourselves, how do we advocate for ourselves in the face of, you know, a community that won't. I mean, it's not, it's funny, it's like not cool to be a white man anymore or something, but like that is what dominates the architecture profession. And so many times I walk into a room and just feel super weird because I'm like, I am a lot younger and a lot more brown and female than most people in this room. And
absolutely.
I put that out of my head so fast because it's like, I can't let that get in the way of what I know.
Yeah, agreed.
But anyway, so like, I appreciate that INOMA is there, that NOMA is there, that we have this strong chapter in Chicago where we can really talk about, you know, the things that we experience, because it's very easy to let people make you think that what you're experiencing is not real or that it doesn't matter. And it's interesting in the design industry, and it leads us, a lot of what we talk about in INOMA with our outreach and everything is just like, think about how design can change your community. And that's what we want people, that's what we want kids to think about.
Yeah, and I think people are often, I mean, I know plenty of white architects who do help with the minority, and that's why it's like, oh, well, can Caucasian people go to the NOMA meetings? It's like, yeah, of course. Like, it's not like you're gonna get bashed if you go there or not. Same thing when I used to go to, or I still do go to, for the Chicago Women in Architecture events. It's like, can I go? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely, come on. Like, you're not gonna be like, you know, man shamed for going to an event.
And you know, I guess I have two things there. One is we will meet Arquitectos, Chicago Women in Architecture, and I know the three of us presidents have met a few times just to talk about, we're not quite AIA level, but how can we support each other and drive ourselves
Do you know
forward.
Noelle?
So I was going to say, Noelle was the one who was saying, like, we want to increase the diversity in our organization, but it's very hard to make that clear when your organization is called Chicago Women in Architecture. And it's like, you don't really have to be in Chicago. You don't really have to be a woman, and you don't have to be an architect, you know?
Right.
And it's the same thing with INOMA. Is like, I didn't get it at first when people would be like, oh, so kind of like asking me roundabout questions. And finally I was just like, you can come if you're white.
Yeah, right.
I didn't
just putting
get
it out there.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's okay. It's all good.
I'm gonna just pause real quick because I want to call out Noelle for not coming on the podcast. I've invited her plenty of times. She's like, "Oh no, I don't want to go on there. Like, what am I going to talk about?" I'm like, "Noelle, you're doing a lot. Yeah, you're doing so much.
She
Come
just
on."
got married too.
So anyway, oh yeah, that was like a long wedding. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
Great.
But yeah, so I think it's definitely the opportunity in the community are super important, and I don't. It's just a matter of like getting involved and just doing it, right? And just providing the resources to other people, I think, is super important.
Right. And so that was the other thing that I wanted to say was we had our meeting at Gensler the other day.
Yeah.
It's funny. I always we talk about Gensler too much, but they're super supportive of the organization. They make things very easy for us on a regular basis. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I think they get a bad rap, but
there's good people in there.
There's definitely good people.
There's really good people in there.
For sure.
So
and I'll definitely be the first to tell you that I'm the one that bashed Gensler all the time. But I also have friends that work there, so it's like I'm totally pro Gensler for sure.
Right.
So
and they really have not said no to us thus far, which is incredible. But one of the women helping us with
that's Brian, everybody.
Hello.
Smitha, we're recording as well. If you want to, no, you're back a camera guy.
But she was saying, like, when they were talking about they had like a women's empowerment meeting, I believe, at Gensler as part of their diversity initiatives, and she said they actually required every woman to bring a man to the meeting, because it really comes down to like, we all know what our issues are, but if you don't bring people who are removed from those issues, you're not gonna make change. And I think that's so important. So I am always like, yes, just come. Like, are you a person? Do you care? Just come.
Right.
Like, just come to the organization.
Absolutely. So, there is one thing at the last I'm stumbling on my words because I don't know how to properly say this. I sent someone an email about how CWA is not bringing up any of the Me Too movement either. in their organization. They're having their like big national meeting, and they're not going to even address it because the president says that it's not it doesn't match their mission. And I'm like, that seems like a BS way to kind of get out of like talking about it. Yeah. I believe so. Now, don't quote me, but I'm almost positive I remember reading that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really interesting. I thought it was something that I feel like should be talked about, and people don't talk about it.
I'm not going to comment on that too much.
No. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting.
Like,
I'll send you the article.
How do I bring that up calmly? Yeah, definitely send me the article.
I'll send you the article on that. So you guys have meetings every 2 months?
Yes. Back to the events. So yeah, we have our meetings every 2 months. We've had kind of a lot going on the last few weeks. So one big initiative that we've been working on and are pretty proud of is like documenting all of the efforts of minority architects in Chicago. So we call it Mapping Our Legacy. And the idea is we've created a form and like a GIS intake, and we have a whole infrastructure to turn it into an interactive map. To just give stories of like all the projects that had minority involvement. So that's one thing. And so we had an event last week for that. That was actually at Now What, which is documenting advocacy and activism in architecture throughout, I believe, all across the 20th century. So they have their exhibit right now, I believe, through the end of the week at the Co-Prosperity Sphere. And it's like a traveling exhibit. And so they offered up their space, like we have this gallery, and to promote what we're doing, we'd like to hold events. So we had our Mapping Our Legacy event in that space, which was pretty special. Last week, our national NOMA president, who's local to Chicago and also from Detroit, was there. She brought Maurice Cox, who's our current city commissioner as of about a week ago.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So Maurice is from Detroit.
Yeah.
What role? Do you know what role he had before?
That's what I don't know, but
Okay.
he was a big deal.
Okay.
I know that for sure.
Yeah.
And he worked closely with Kim Dowdell, who's now here in Chicago at HOK. And they both did a lot with just kind of community development in Detroit. And now they're both here.
That's great.
So
that's awesome.
really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I realized I was telling you about retroactively about an event.
Yeah.
So
No, that's great. It's good.
cover.
It's good to know what happens at the events and who shows up. And
so that was really
happens.
cool. We did we always do food and drinks.
Yeah.
Important to have, support.
Yeah.
So we'll do food and drinks, and then we had Roberta Washington there as well. She kind of heads up the Historic Preservation Department in New York, in the city of New York, which is pretty cool because that's actually a legislative department there, as opposed to here where it's more of a council that gives advice. But so she was also a curator for the Now What exhibit, so she came as well. And
where's the Now What exhibit? Where's that at?
Now What is at, that was a lot of information I just rattled off, sorry, about our event.
It's okay.
Now What is a traveling exhibit that highlights advocacy and activism in architecture.
Nice.
For the last, since the turn of the 20th century, we'll say. I think it's a little after that, but and it just highlights all these different points where people kind of stood up and said, hey, no. So the letter I talked about with AIA was part of that.
Cool.
And then so that exhibit has been at the Co-Prosperity Sphere in Bridgeport.
Gotcha.
Since the beginning of September, and so they have invited different organizations to have events there. So that's what I was speaking to earlier.
Okay, understood.
So
Gotcha.
IL-NOMA
Gotcha.
was one of those organizations invited. So we did a couple of different events there.
Are you familiar with the open house architecture or open architecture? I don't know if you're familiar with Craig. No, I'd have to get his name. Never mind. Keep going. Sorry.
So that was what we were doing with the exhibit there.
Yeah.
So that was an event that we had last week where people came out to. Well, what we were doing was actively intaking information for our map.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so how long have you guys been doing So you've been sending the form around. How long have you guys? Did that just start this year?
Yeah, it started this year. So obviously with IL-NOMA, I am almost undoubtedly the youngest president the organization has had since its inception in 1971. So that just was something that I needed to be very aware of. So a big part of my kind of mission statement in coming into this year was to highlight the legacy of the organization, which was an evil ploy for me to learn about everything that's happened in the organization to date.
Yeah.
So, we had a panel at the beginning of the year where we had a lot of our longest standing members talk about their experiences, because they've actually been in the organization, a lot of them, since it started. So they have
that
really
was the
great
first panel that
stories.
you were talking about that you were on?
No, so that was actually a panel that IL-NOMA had that kind of kicked off the legacy thing, started the conversation about the map, and that was back in February. And that was at SOM, another great supporter of the organization. So that was one of our first, that was where the panel, that was where the legacy aspect happened. That was where we started talking about, how are we going to document and record our legacy? That's how the map came about. The panel that I spoke on was the opening night of, not the party, but prior to the party, Now What had a opening panel and reception that was to speak about the contributions of women and the organizations that they lead.
Yeah.
And so I was part of that.
Yeah, it was interesting. And it wasn't last NeoCon, maybe 2 NeoCons ago. I went to a lecture from Art Gensler, and someone brought up the question about diversity. Why isn't there diverse architects, blah, blah, blah. And he was pretty, he's an old man, so he was a little bit more frank than I feel like a lot of people would like it. Whatever. He was speaking his mind. And he basically said, look, if there's smart, educated, diverse kids, they usually don't go into architecture. They go into banking. They go into something where there's more money. I know. She's cringing right now. For those who are not watching the video, they're cringing.
That's not false, but
that's what he said. And I was like, wow, okay, well that's better than him trying to say, you know what, we're trying, blah blah blah. Like, no, like give it to me a little bit more real. Like, right. and I do see like people, if they want to make money, some people don't go into architecture. They go into more of the development side or things like that. So,
I mean,
that was interesting.
One of the big parts of NOMA and a huge part of IL-NOMA is project pipeline. Okay. And the aim there is like to change those statistics that I was speaking to earlier. And you do that by reaching out to kids. And honestly, what it comes down to is like kids in these impoverished, underserved, honestly neglected neighborhoods don't even know what architecture is. Like they don't know why their house looks like how it does. So a lot of what we do is actually go into these communities. We run architecture workshops in the school. We did a summer camp at IIT for 135 students this past August, just to teach them, like, this is what architecture is. This is what it can do. I really would like to shout out the Biennial right now, because it is doing an incredible job of highlighting the reality of this city. Like the theme is "and other stories." And I suppose some people are upset that there is no architecture, there's the formal, pretty, beautiful, exciting of architecture is not covered in this year's Biennial. But I think it is amazing because it is pointing out conditions of what really happens to people every single day on the south and west sides, and it's ignored. Like people just like there's not a lot in those areas because people don't want to go there. It's portrayed as terrible neighborhoods, as very unsafe, and this stuff is all really highlighted in the Biennial. So anyways, this just takes it back to the comments about, like, yes, it's true that diverse, successful kids go into banking or medicine or law. Sure, but, like, first of all, I don't know that diverse, successful kids should be thought of that way as, like, one little group of,
sure,
yeah. There's, like, a reason why there's one little group of diverse, successful kids. And then I also just think it's important to just talk about it and get it out there. Like, I could go on forever, but my one little thing that I will always root is we were lucky to be part of the Black Creativity Fair at the Museum of Science and Industry. We had a booth there where we had kids building little models and learning about landscape architecture. One of our members is an incredible landscape architect, a lot of knowledge about plants. And then we were teaching them about architecture, about the work that we do at our firms. Yeah. And when I always ask the kids, and these are like, 5 to 10-year-old kids, any range there. I always ask them, like, so do you know what architecture is? And they kind of look at me, and sometimes they do. Sometimes kids will be like, yes, they design the buildings. And I'm like, well,
Yeah, right.
but sometimes they kind of squint their face up, and I'm like, architects design buildings. They're responsible for creating the spaces and environments and experiences that we have as we walk around our built world. And then we're standing in like the main atrium of the Museum of Science and Industry, which is this huge dome.
Yep.
And this little kid, I'm never going to forget the look on his face, but I was like, an architect designed this building. And this little 3-foot tall kid looks up and goes, this building? And he's just in awe.
So cute,
like,
yeah.
like, this isn't just here. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, and you can think about every single built thing you see. Do you want to make it better? How could you make it better?
Right.
Because just going back to the biennial, like, sure, maybe that stuff is negative, and maybe if it's not what you see every day, sure, it's depressing. It might make you feel like you're at fault.
Yeah, it's eye-opening.
It's something that a lot of kids will understand. A lot of young people will gravitate towards because it's something that has to be changed.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best things about kids and young people is, like, there's a lot of desire to make that change and, like, ask the questions and figure out how that can happen. And, like, I love seeing that happening at such a huge exhibit, and then remembering, like, the kids that I will go and see in Little Village, in Englewood, like, in all of these neighborhoods that, you know, end up ignored. I love that.
Another big shout out to Buckley Redner for hosting us tonight. Buckley started or was a part of this organization called Regroup. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they started an event in Atlanta and then came over here to Chicago called Refortify, where they work with a group in the West Side, and they have maybe, I want to say, I'm probably going to get this number wrong, maybe about 35 kids that work, and they partner with different architecture firms, and they build these forts, right, and try to explain to them what architecture is, explain to them, like, what design is. It's super cool. Wow. They had a great event. They have an event once a year. But it's interesting because they can build whatever fort they want, and they try to teach them. And I remember that this one girl who works, I forgot who exactly told me, but a lot of the kids were designing basketball, like homes and basketball things. And they're like, because the event's in March, the one girl said, like, you know, well, they all pretty much want to do basketball theme because it's like March and it's like the playoffs. I'm like, no, I don't think, like, lacrosse is a sport that they may not know. You know, they are familiar with basketball, play basketball. Right. This is what they just don't know what they don't know. So, like, that's why people are building
they just don't know what they don't know.
Right.
That's the problem with everyone in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you got to be open to other things. You got to be open to see it. And that's why the Biennial, I think, is awesome. There is are you doing anything for Chicago Chicago Ideas Week? Because there's an event on that Wednesday or Tuesday, the 17th. I don't know what day that is. But it's about, you know, architecture and how people will change communities based on the architecture. I got to send you that one too.
Yeah, please do.
So there's 2 links, right? I got to send you that one.
It sounds like it's during the conference, but definitely send it to me.
I got to send you that one.
And
there's another link I said.
The article about
CWA.
and CWA. Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
well,
yeah, again, thank you. We can sign out here, but tell us about the meeting in the next few months for NOMA.
Right, okay, so we're doing a tour of a Southside Englewood High School on actually this Friday. It's a building that was done by Moody Nolan in conjunction with Brook Architecture, both Black-owned firms, so that's pretty cool. Incredible high school that they just built, and you can sign up to go on that tour at our website, i-noma.org.
So this will probably come out
everything else we're seeing.
It'll probably come out like Thursday or Friday, so I might be
get there tomorrow. Anyways, let's see what else is coming up we've got our conference coming up in the middle of October, and that's kind of locking it down. Holiday party is going to be December 10th. Okay, that's always a good time. This year it's going to be in the Willis Towers lovely steel room, which is a space on their 33rd floor, incredibly redesigned, gorgeous. Beautiful space. So you can be looking out for that on the website. Honestly, all of our upcoming events are always on our website. Okay. So i-noma.org, we've got an events section, and then we'll have our general body meeting in November. Those are the 2 that are coming to mind right now.
Yeah, so what goes on in the general body meeting?
Yeah, so general body meetings are an incredible time for anyone to come out and just see what we're doing and really experience the family. Jennifer Johnson, our vice president, always orders an amazing spread of food. Like, I'm always like, what's going on here? we had like a whole taco spread one night. We had soul food a couple weeks ago. We
Nice.
had we did what's the cafecito? Just like a huge spread from cafecito one day. Like, really good stuff. So we'll have lots of food, plenty to drink, and essentially we'll just talk about all of our initiatives and what's going on during the year for people to get involved with. So that could be a lot of just covering everything that we've been doing. We'll get updates from our marketing team, from our finance team. We'll talk about the initiatives happening in our professional development sector, in Project Pipeline, which is our outreach sector. And then it's just a good time to get face-to-face interactions with a lot of our members and the e-board, because a lot of what we do will happen, via email. We have our weekly e-board meetings, but it's a good time to just understand like how genuine and passionate this organization is, and just like get roped in.
Do you guys help? I'm sorry, not to cut you off. Do you guys help with minority architects getting their license or registration, or
yes,
how do you guys do that?
So, I mean, we've had our 3 exam challenge going all year. So if you pass 3 exams in 6 months, we'll give you $500.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then right now we also have our 2 exam challenge going, because we know there are a lot of our members who are working on those last 2 really tough exams. So if they complete those before the conference, we'll pay for their conference fee.
That's awesome.
So.
And what about business registration? Because I know that's a totally different.
Business registration.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something you guys have explored.
I think that's going to be on the professional sector, on the professional side, and definitely something that we're going to pursue and develop next year.
I know a lot of, MBEs and WBEs have been huge lately. And I know personally, like I've seen a lot of RFPs that go out and people going out for that sort of thing. So I think like right now is the time to definitely register businesses.
Yes,
because a lot of people are looking for that.
There's a lot that goes into that, but I know that next year we're going to have heavy focus on our professional development side, because I've got my own ideas. Like, I think more people need to know just about finances. I think we need to be more interested in sustainability. And so those are kind of things that we'll be focusing on next year, but all of this that involves how the professional becomes a better professional and is able to take charge of their own career. That's all stuff we need to get into. So it's going to be heavy focus.
Cool.
For that second year.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. This is Hello, I'm Felix signing out with
Smitha Vassen.
Smitha Vassen. So thank you guys a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here, Felix.
Your safety is important. If you observe unattended packages, vandalism, or suspicious activity, inform CTA personnel immediately.